Most people will never respect you, not because you're weak, not because you're boring, but because you're accidentally teaching them that you don't require it. In the next few minutes, you'll learn the one shift that flips how people treat you instantly, not someday, not after you prove yourself, but the moment you walk into a room. If this is hitting home, pause for a second and lock this in. Respect starts the moment you stop chasing it. And if you want more strategies like this that change how people respond to you instantly, make sure you stay with me because what's coming next builds even more power on top of this foundation. Most people make the critical mistake of assuming respect is something they can earn by being liked, by explaining themselves, or by trying to prove they deserve it. But the truth is, respect is triggered by behavior, not by permission. People don't hand it out because you're polite, smart, or hardworking. They respond to cues that signal your internal value and boundaries. And if those cues aren't there, they unconsciously downgrade how they treat you. The first thing to understand is that respect is always a reaction to what you project outwardly, whether you intend it or not. And it starts the moment someone notices you. When you walk into a room, even without saying a word, your posture, your pace, and the way you occupy space are sending messages about how you expect to be treated. Someone who slouches, fidgets, or rushes to fill silence signals that they are negotiable, that they are available for interruption, and that their boundaries are weak, and the brain perceives this as low value. Conversely, someone who moves deliberately, maintains calm in the face of chaos, and doesn't over-explain commands automatic attention, because the human mind is wired to follow certainty. The key behavior that triggers respect is emotional control. Remaining steady under pressure communicates internal strength, which the brain interprets as worth listening to, following, or honoring. Beyond calmness, setting non-negotiable boundaries without drama is another behavior that immediately signals status. You don't need to argue for it, you simply act as if your limits already exist, and people respond accordingly. Silence also plays a subtle but powerful role. When you pause instead of rushing to fill space, you create a tension that draws others to match your energy, often unconsciously elevating how they treat you. All of this shows that respect isn't something to request, debate, or demand. It's a reflection of how consistently you communicate your value through action, presence, and boundaries. People notice the difference between someone who needs validation and someone who silently expects it, and once they do, respect follows naturally. This is why so many fail to earn the regard of others. They keep teaching people that they can be treated casually, when in reality, the fastest route to commanding respect is simply through deliberate behavior that signals self-respect first. People decide how to treat you in the first few seconds of interaction. And most of the time, those first impressions are irreversible because the brain is wired to make rapid judgments as a survival mechanism. From the moment you step into a room or start a conversation, every microsignal you send, your posture, eye contact, tone of voice, pace of speech, even the way you breathe, is being processed by others at a subconscious level, and it forms a blueprint for how they will respond to you. If you enter with hesitation, a hunched posture, fidgeting hands, or a rushed energy, the brain reads these signals as uncertainty or low status, and suddenly your words carry less weight, your suggestions are questioned, and your presence is undervalued no matter how intelligent or insightful you are. On the other hand, if you move with deliberate intention, maintain steady eye contact, speak clearly, and show calm confidence without arrogance, the brain automatically flags you as someone worthy of attention and influence. This is why emotional control in the first moments is so critical. The way you handle even tiny provocations, interruptions, or awkward silences immediately informs others whether you are someone to respect, follow, or ignore. Timing also plays a subtle role. When you pause before answering or let others speak first without losing composure, you project authority, which creates an invisible hierarchy that others unconsciously follow. People rarely consciously analyze this, but it affects every interaction, from casual conversations to negotiations. The key insight is that respect isn't something that grows over time. It often crystallizes in these initial seconds, and the behaviors you display set the tone for the entire relationship. The faster you understand and control these first impressions, the faster you can command respect consistently. Every second matters because your brain and everyone else's is wired to assess trustworthiness, status, and competence instantly, and those assessments dictate behavior long before any words are exchanged. The people who consistently gain respect are not louder, smarter, or more charming. They are deliberate about how they show up immediately, creating an environment where others instinctively treat them with consideration, authority, and deference. Calm certainty is more powerful than loud confidence because it signals internal control in a way that words or volume never can. Most people confuse confidence with being loud, animated, or aggressive, thinking that forceful speech or exaggerated energy will make others take them seriously. But in reality, over-the-top displays often create doubt and resistance because the brain interprets chaos as unpredictability and risk. Calm certainty, on the other hand, communicates that you know what you want, you understand the situation, and you are fully in command of yourself and your environment. This kind of presence doesn't shout for attention, it commands it naturally, like a still lake that reflects everything around it with clarity. The brain is drawn to stability. Clarity and control. When you speak deliberately, with measured pauses and a steady tone, people unconsciously lean in, not because they're afraid, but because they recognize competence and authority. It's the same reason leaders in high-stakes situations rarely panic. Their calm sets the emotional baseline for everyone else, and in social interactions, this translates directly into respect. Loud confidence often comes from insecurity, needing to fill space, or seeking validation, whereas calm certainty comes from knowing that your presence, actions, and decisions carry weight on their own. Even body language reinforces this. Relaxed shoulders, grounded stance, and purposeful movement silently communicate dominance and self-assuredness without aggression. Eye contact, when steady but not overbearing, projects the same message that you are engaged, aware, and unshakable. People don't just listen to what you say, they feel the energy behind it, and calm certainty resonates at a subconscious level, telling others that you are someone whose boundaries matter, whose decisions matter, and whose presence is non-negotiable. Over time, practicing calm certainty becomes habitual, and it transforms not only how people treat you, but how you perceive yourself. You no longer need to compete for respect because your behavior signals it. Automatically, and this silent authority consistently shapes interactions so that people defer to you, pay attention, and adjust their behavior around you. In essence, calm certainty is the invisible magnet that pulls respect towards you without a single shout, argument, or demand. And it works because the brain prioritizes stability and control above all else. Boundaries create status faster than words ever can because people don't respect what you say. They respect what you allow. Most individuals waste their energy trying to explain themselves, persuade others, or negotiate every interaction, thinking that if they can justify their position, respect will follow. But in reality, respect is triggered by limits, not logic. When you set clear boundaries and enforce them consistently, you communicate an unspoken message. You value yourself, your time, and your energy, and you are not available for mistreatment, interruption, or casual dismissal. This is incredibly powerful because humans are wired to notice what is non-negotiable. The moment you act as if certain behaviors are unacceptable, people unconsciously elevate your status, even if they don't fully understand why. Boundaries are not about aggression or shutting others down. They are about clarity and predictability. When you calmly refuse to tolerate interruptions, gossip, or disrespect, you force people to adjust their behavior to meet the standard you've set. And in doing so, they start treating you differently, more attentively, more cautiously, and more respectfully. Physical boundaries reinforce this even further. Where you stand, how you occupy space, and how you respond to encroachment all communicate limits before you even speak. Similarly, social boundaries, like protecting your time or prioritizing your goals over constant approval seeking, signal high status because they show you are in control of your environment. People are drawn to those who respect themselves because they can sense the internal rules that guide behavior and they instinctively mirror them, giving deference and consideration in return. Enforcing boundaries consistently is crucial. If you set limits and then allow them to be crossed without consequence, you undo the message entirely. True respect emerges not from the volume of your voice or the cleverness of your arguments, but from the silent authority of your limits, the unshakable signal that some things are non-negotiable. When practiced deliberately, boundaries do more to elevate your social standing and command respect than any speech, presentation, or performance ever could. People quickly learn that respecting you is not optional. It's the natural response to the standards you embody. Silence used correctly commands more authority than talking because most people instinctively fill gaps with words, believing that speaking equals influence, when in reality, the brain interprets restraint as power. When you pause before responding, when you allow a moment of quiet to linger after a statement, or when you listen intently without interrupting, you create a subtle tension that draws attention and signals confidence. Silence communicates that you are not desperate for validation, that your presence and opinion already carry weight, and that you are fully in control of the interaction. In contrast, those who rush to speak, over-explain, or chatter excessively often signal insecurity, which subconsciously lowers their perceived status and makes them easier to dominate or dismiss. The power of silence is amplified because human brains are wired to seek closure and patterns. When a pause occurs, listeners are naturally drawn to fill it mentally, reflecting on what was said and granting your words more impact than if you had immediately rushed to add another point. Moreover, silence gives you time to read the room, to observe micro-expressions and subtle shifts in energy, allowing you to respond with precision rather than reaction. It also forces others to project their own expectations onto you, often elevating your perceived authority simply because they are unsure of your next move. Body language during these pauses reinforces the effect. Calm posture, relaxed shoulders, and steady eye contact tell the brain that you are unshakable, grounded, and not subject to external pressures. Over time, people learn to respect and even anticipate your contributions because your words are sparing but intentional and your silence carries weight. In essence, strategic silence is not emptiness. It is concentrated presence. It signals that you do not need to argue for respect because you already embody it internally and the room adjusts accordingly. Those who master this understand that authority is often more about what is unsaid than what is said, and that by simply controlling when and how you speak, you can command respect far faster and more reliably than by trying to dominate the conversation with volume, urgency, or over-assertion. Silence, when wielded with purpose, becomes a tool of invisible influence that immediately elevates status and forces others to recalibrate how they interact with you. Before a single word is exchanged, the human brain is already evaluating your value, authority, and status based entirely on your body language. Your posture, gestures, facial expressions, and the way you occupy space communicate far more than any argument, explanation, or claim ever could. When you stand tall with shoulders relaxed but squared, your movements deliberate and grounded, and your head held at a natural angle, the subconscious mind of anyone observing you interprets these signals as confidence, competence, and self-possession. Conversely, slouching, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, or moving hastily signals uncertainty, lower status, or lack of self-respect, and people instinctively adjust their behavior accordingly, often underestimating you before you've even spoken. Eye contact plays a particularly powerful role. Maintaining steady, calm eye contact demonstrates attention and authority, while looking away too often conveys nervousness or submission. Gestures that are controlled, purposeful, and minimal reinforce calm certainty, whereas frantic or excessive gesturing diminishes perceived credibility. Even spatial presence matters. How you occupy a room, whether you leave openings for others to impose on your space, or whether you move with intention, communicates who you are in the social hierarchy. The critical insight here is that respect is first earned through signals, not explanations. Your body language sets the emotional stage for all interactions. When aligned with emotional control, silence, and clear boundaries, it acts as a nonverbal amplifier, making people more likely to listen, defer, and treat you with consideration before any words are spoken. Essentially, your body communicates authority instantly, giving you an invisible edge that words alone can never create. People are naturally skeptical of one-time displays of dominance, charm, or confidence because the brain treats single events as unreliable. True respect is earned over time, and the key factor that solidifies it is consistency, showing the same level of calm, authority, and self-possession across situations repeatedly. When someone demonstrates control, decisiveness, and emotional stability once, it may impress, but it does not automatically translate into lasting respect. The brain seeks patterns to judge reliability, repeatedly showing up with the same calm certainty, enforcing boundaries, controlling silence, and exhibiting strong body language. Establishes a pattern that others recognize subconsciously as trustworthy and authoritative. This is why leaders, influencers, and highly respected individuals are rarely defined by single acts of bravado. Their power comes from predictability in their self-respect and behavior. Consistency also signals internal confidence. It communicates that you do not need external validation because your behavior is stable regardless of the audience, circumstances, or provocations. Over time, people internalize these patterns and adjust their behavior around you automatically, treating you with respect even when you are not actively asserting it. Inconsistent behavior, even with occasional flashes of dominance, erodes credibility because the brain flags unpredictability as risk. Reputation and the automatic respect it generates is a cumulative signal. Every interaction builds or diminishes it, and consistent demonstrations of calm authority, clear boundaries, deliberate silence, and intentional body language compound over time, creating a social force that people respond to instinctively. In short, one-time displays may catch attention, but consistency commands long-term respect that becomes invisible yet undeniable. Self-respect is the invisible force behind social respect because the way you treat yourself sets the standard for how others treat you, even if they are not consciously aware of it. People instinctively mirror the signals you send about your own value, and if you tolerate disrespect, over-apologize, or constantly seek validation, you are training others to treat you the same way, often without realizing it. On the other hand, when you demonstrate unwavering self-respect by setting clear boundaries, standing firm in your decisions, maintaining emotional control, and refusing to compromise your principles for approval, you create an unspoken rule. You are not available for mistreatment, manipulation, or casual dismissal. This invisible force communicates to the brain that you are someone who matters, and the brain responds by assigning you status and deference automatically. Self-respect is not about arrogance, ego, or trying to look impressive. It's about internal alignment, consistency, and demonstrating that your presence has intrinsic value. Every choice you make, every reaction you allow, and every boundary you enforce reinforces this signal. Even subtle cues like posture, tone of voice, pacing, and the way you occupy space carry messages about how you feel about yourself. And these cues are interpreted subconsciously by others. When you act from a place of self-respect, people sense it, whether you speak or remain silent, and they adjust their behavior accordingly, listening more closely, deferring more naturally, and showing consideration without prompting. The power of self-respect lies in its invisibility. It doesn't need to be announced, argued, or demanded. It works quietly in the background, shaping interactions and influencing perceptions, creating a social gravitational pull that attracts respect automatically. Ultimately, respect from others is less about what you say or do outwardly and more about the energy you project internally, and self-respect is the engine driving that energy. When you honor yourself consistently, you teach the world to honor you in return, making it the foundational principle behind commanding authority, establishing status, and ensuring that respect is never optional but inevitable.